Welcome to Naperville Notables. I'm Liz Spencer. It's football season, so I thought it'd be a good idea to sit down with Jim Brown, one of Naperville's most influential coaches. Jim, let's talk football. It's August. It's getting ready. We got Naperville Central behind you, and you have fed a lot of kids into all the high schools with football with St. Raphael's. Tell me how it all got started. How did you get involved with that?
I was at Mass. I was at Mass at St. Raphael's, 12 o'clock Mass, and that's all I had in the bulletin in 1969. So I went downstairs, and a guy that was there by the name of Lou German, who I've coached with all these years. Unfortunately, he's not coaching right now because he has Parkinson's, and he can't drive all the way out from the city where he lives, but we'll get him out here for some practices. So he was interviewing for assistant coach, and it was just, he was the head coach, he needed an assistant. So I interviewed, and he waited 3 days before he said okay. I didn't get a call from him until Wednesday. And I looked at the sheet, and I was the only candidate. So that's how. So I got started with him, and that was in 1969, and we coached together. Let's see, this will be, 14, 9, 5, 46th year.
Wow, that's awesome. Did you play football as a kid?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Played in high school as a quarterback. Enjoyed it, and I went out. I could have played Division III, but I got an academic scholarship to go to Northwestern. So I took that instead. And then just for the fun of it, I wanted to see what Big Ten football was like. So I went out for Northwestern's team. And back in those days, back in the 50s, they had unlimited scholarships. So they had like 35 scholarship kids, and they were all 10 times better than I was. So we had 18 kids that showed up to be walk-ons.
Wow.
They put you in the basement of Dyke Stadium, two to a locker, next to the furnace, I still remember. No, you couldn't go to the training table, nothing like that. They tried to get rid of you. So I lasted 2 weeks of two-a-days, and then I turned in my equipment because I had to go study. And but I made some good friends. And I was terrible relative to how good they were. I mean, but I enjoyed it, made some friends, and that was good.
Well, I think the key there is you enjoyed it, you respected the game, and isn't that a little bit how St. Raphael's football works right now, is that it's about playing and developing a team?
Absolutely. One of the things that Joe Bungie used to be the coach here, and he said he could always recognize a St. Raphael's player because he was somebody who was fundamentally sound and had a love of the game. And so that's what we're looking for. We want the kids to use football as a vehicle for developing life skills. That's just number one. And there's 11 life skills that we teach. And Sunflower has the same approach. They have 8 pillars that they had last year. They were slightly different than ours, but they all converted one to the other. It was really neat. So we think that teaching life skills is more important. Like I was telling you earlier, Mike Stein said if you use football to teach life skills, you can't lose. And he was giving you the example of his game with Wabanzi. That's the truth. And so we do the same thing. We just, and the kids learn life skills. One of the things that I'm going to do is I'm writing a second book. And what I did was take the 11 life skills, and I sent an email out to a lot of the kids that played for me before and said, which of these life skills did you learn in St. Raphael's football, and how are they helping you today? And so I got some great stories back. So what I'm writing is a book. It's a simple truths type book, about 10,000 words. And instead of using famous people to endorse these concepts, I'm using everyday people like you and I, people who actually are out there using them. And so
that's great. You on your website and in your coaching at St. Raphael's, you talk about value-based. And I think that's an interesting concept. So tell me what value-based means.
Values-based, it means that you first of all, you decide what your values are. You decide what they're going to be. And then if you have a decision to make, A or B, You don't say, what should I do? Say, this is more politically correct and this one is going to get me more money. You don't do anything like that. You just say, which one of those two alternatives is consistent with my values? Like the number one value in St. Raphael's football is that we make all our decisions in the best interest of the children. So you have a decision to make, you just say, which one of these two alternatives is in the best interest of the children now? That always gives you the right answer, every time. And you're consistent. You never have to worry about what you said or what you did because you know you acted from your values if you want to review it. Now the hard part comes is implementation, because sometimes it points you to something that's really tough. For instance, if we have to relieve a coach, like last year we had to relieve one of our coaches mid-season. That was really hard because of a whole bunch of reasons, but it was the right thing to do. And then the other value is that everybody treats one another with respect, which means that no parent or coach can ever say anything negative to each other or to a referee. And we have a coach on every staff who's in charge of parental behavior to make sure that that doesn't happen. Now it does sometimes, and we have some occasionally something happens, but most of the time, and we have no trouble getting referees because everybody wants to referee here because they don't get yelled at. So that's what acting your values is, and the way and that was my last assignment at Lucent Technologies was to convert the company to a company that had a coaching leadership style and a culture where people acted from their values. So it was good.
I think it's tough to act on value-based in the society we are in right now, which is a little bit more instant gratification, a little bit more about the resume line, and collecting things to get ahead. How do you combat that?
Well, I think that they aren't necessarily not incompatible. I think if you do the right thing, chances are it's going to result in a good result. And if you get good results, you'll have something to put on your resume. It's just like I tell kids or people I talk to occasionally give a talk is that you can't just network if you don't have anything to talk about. But so you have to do something. You have to do something. You have to do something and make it successful. It's like if you want to be a leader, you can't talk leadership. You have to do it. You have to be a leader.
Yeah, it is, and it's not as easy as it looks. You also talk about it's not about winning at St. Raphael's. It's about playing the game. And so a lot of your kids who are playing are not necessarily going to end up on the high school team. And I think that's wonderful because I think you got to play for the game. How do parents feel about that? How do kids feel about that? How do you get that all to work? Because that's unusual, especially in this. Naperville's pretty competitive, pretty success driven.
Yeah. Well, if you, I'd say I looked it up before I came here because I saw that question, and probably about 70% of the kids that start for us on the 8th grade level play on Friday night. Okay. But the other kids go on to do other things. And I looked at some of the kids of the last 3 or 4 years and what they're doing today. And some of them are in theater, some of them are in student government, some of them have come back to coach. The kid that I call him a kid, but the guy Matt McInerney is going to be the head coach of our JV team, and I've forgotten what year he played, but he played for Bennett. He was a very good player, and did a very unusual thing one time. He played in a game and was the reason why they lost the game in the playoffs. And he went to the other team's locker room to tell them what a great game they played. How do you do that? So anyway, he's back. He's going to coach our 5th, 6th grade team this year. So it'll be great to have him back. And we have 3 or 4 kids on our coaching staff on the varsity that are ex-players. And so I guess the bottom line is that if you use football as a vehicle for teaching life skills, it's applicable to whatever you do. if you don't choose to play football. Like for instance, one of the kids today, I have my grandson's going to play this year, and he doesn't know anybody on the team. So I asked a boy to be his mentor. So he started out last night being the mentor, and he was introducing Nick to all the players, and he was learning how to be a leader. So,
yeah, and sometimes just a little responsibility, when asked to give a little responsibility, people respond really well, from kids all the way up to adults. They want to have a little piece of the action, but maybe not all of the action.
oh, absolutely. And it has to be something that's reasonable, something that they control, something that they can have success at.
Right.
But all Bobby has to do is walk around, take Nick, introduce him to this kid, and then facilitate conversations in groups of 4, and he was doing all that last night.
That's awesome. Well, and it is the first step. Where did you learn to be a coach? You said you played through high school. You thought about it at the Big Ten level, but where did you learn how to coach? Was there a mentor for you? Was it?
I thought that when I was in high school I wanted to be a coach,
Okay.
but then I found out the teachers and coaches didn't make enough money. So,
Well, at least
so
you're
I
honest,
asked.
huh?
So I asked my counselor, which profession makes the most money? And he told me engineering. So I said, well, that's what I'm going to be. I'll be an engineer. So Northwestern became an engineer. But how I learned to coach, I just learned to coach at St. Raphael's. Once I started, one of the best ways to learn something is just to do it. And I go to conferences, coaching clinics. I read on the internet, and then I just evaluate my own experience. And the primary and most important thing in coaching is to develop that communication link between you and the child based on mutual respect. And then once you do that, then you can teach. And coaching is just teaching. And so you just keep it simple, and it's really not a very hard game to play. I mean, you do certain things, and you block a certain way, you tackle a certain way, you throw a ball, you catch a ball, you run. I mean, you can teach those things as long as you can develop that communication link.
Wow. Well, you make it sound easy. And I was thinking about, and you mentioned that you went back and looked in your records. Do you keep track of some of your kids today, of where they've been, and how does that make you feel? I can tell it's a sense of pride for you, isn't it? Yeah. Well, now you've had a lot. You've got Coach New over at Bennett, and Mike Stein, all these guys here, and they've been influenced by you. So that's a great feeling. Talk to me a little bit about teams. You've had great success. How do you keep a team together? Because we have teams all over in life, whether it be a football team, a work team, a family team. Teams are hard, man. To keep them working together for any length of time is hard. Any advice or secrets there, Coach?
I think the key thing is the environment, is the culture.
Okay.
And you have to develop a culture that is. And I think the best way to develop a culture or to develop a team chemistry is to use football to teach life skills. See, because then kids are getting something more from it that they can use later, as opposed to learning how to just play football, which is really, more for the coach and more for the team. And so you keep a team together that way. It's just like we have a rule. Last night we introduced the rule that if we have a good practice, and a good practice can be measured in many ways, where the kids hustle and they learn a lot, and they like nobody never walks anywhere, they always run everywhere. If they have a good practice, we end it with a Red Wing cheer, and if we have a bad practice, we just say team. That's it. So last night I said, let's see if we can set a record this year. Last year we had a team where we didn't have any instances where we said team. And one of the kids said, yes, we did, Coach, and that was my fault. I remember that night that we had to say team, so there's one. So anyway, But it's all about the culture, and it's so if you focus on the culture, you focus on the team chemistry, and you just teach basic fundamentals, you'll gain that consistency. And I think we're known as a team that if you're going to play St. Raphael's, you want to play them early in the season, because by the end of the season, team chemistry will kick in, and they'll be a lot stronger, because once the team chemistry kicks in, it amplifies everything else that you've done. I mean, it's like all the fundamentals are amplified. All of the, we like to teach play without fear of failure. And that was one of the things that's hard to get across sometimes, because our society maybe is not too tolerant of failure.
No, no, we don't want failure. I mean, it's hard to get back from failure.
But one of the things you convince kids of is we can try to convince them that unless you play at the level where there's a good chance of failure, you're not growing as fast as you could grow. And this is all about growth. We want you to just get better as a person. So play it where there's a risk of failure, and so you fail. Just like if we lose a game, I ask the kids one question: did you do your best? That's it. They say, "Yep, did my best." And then you just get rid of it. You flush it. You say, "Hey, next game, let's go." That's it. Because because that's the only thing you control. You control whether you do your best. You control whether you ever give up. You control how you deal with adversity. You control whether you're going to fulfill your commitments at all costs. You control whether, if you're going to do something, just make sure you do 20% more than you think you can. Make it worthwhile.
Well, it's tough, athletes-wise. Not every day is you're able to do your very best athlete. Sometimes the conditions are hot. Sometimes you're not 100% feeling your best, and so it's what but you try to do your best effort every day. So
yeah, and see, those are things we tell the kids they control all those things.
Yes.
See, we don't ask them to run a 4.4, a 4.2 40 or anything. They can't do that. We don't want them to lift a lot of weight or anything like that, and they can't do that.
Right.
So everything that we ask them to do, they control, and every one of their 11 life skills, they control whether they're going to do it or not. And so just focus on those things that you control. And that's something that they can take into later in life too, is, sometimes we focus on things that we have no control over. And we get, a source of stress.
Right.
And we worry about it. But Covey had a really good way of treating this. He had something he called, let's see if I can remember it, a circle of influence and a circle of concern. So if you're going to do something about it, it's in your circle of influence. So then you put it there and you do something about it. If you're not going to do anything about it, you can't. Let's say you just can't, or you don't care to. Then it's in your circle of concern, and then you don't sweat it. Don't worry about it. Don't even think about it. You're not going to do something about it. And that way you can cut down the amount of stress you have.
Yeah, I think we all can cut down our stress by thinking about what we can do and what we can't, and what we want to and what we don't want to. And I think those are keys too, the want and not want.
Oh, absolutely. And they're some things are more important than others.
Right, and they switch. They ebb and flow in life. But let's talk a little bit about, you've hinted a little bit that you went to Northwestern, you got an engineering degree, you played football as a young man, and you're originally from Kalamazoo, Michigan?
Kalamazoo, right.
How did you choose Northwestern? Just because the best engineering school, you were going to make a lot of money?
I chose Northwestern because they had the co-op plan.
Okay.
And I could go to school we came from a poor family. We didn't have any money. So my parents couldn't afford to send me there. So I got an academic scholarship that was based on academics, but I think it was mostly based on need.
Okay.
So anyway, it was full tuition. And then they gave me an opportunity to work for my room.
Okay.
They gave me an opportunity to work for my food, my board. They gave me an opportunity to sell programs so I could make money at the football games. They gave me an opportunity to grade calculus papers to make money. And I could even play sports to get my social dues in the fraternity. So I had all these opportunities to make the money that was required to go there. And then, of course, co-oping is where you go to school half a year, and then I worked for Western Electric the other half of the year. And that was really good because once I started co-oping, all of the things that I was taking, all the courses I was taking meant a lot more to me. So the reason I chose Northwestern is because of all those opportunities I gave.
And so you graduated with a degree in engineering, and then went to work for Western Electric. And then when did you return? You also got your master's from Keller School.
Yeah, Northwestern or Western Electric paid for that. I went at night.
Great.
5 years at night, and they paid for it. And all I had to do was to go and do the work. It was great. The only thing you had to do, you worked all day, and then you had to go at night.
Yeah.
And you had to get it all done in 5 years, because if you didn't get it done in 5 years, the course you took at the beginning, they would clip off. So you had to get it in 5 years.
Yes, yeah.
So I did.
So tell me a little bit about your family. Tell me a little bit about your wife.
Let's see, I'm married. Oh God, let's see. I got to think about it. No, 48 years. I got it right.
And how did you meet? Did you meet in college?
Met at Northwestern.
Oh, that's sweet.
And we met in chemistry class, and then 8 years later we got married.
I love stories like that.
I had, let's see, I had to, I was hanging tough in there. She had a lot of other opportunities, and I just outweighed all of them. So Marcia is went to Northwestern, and she's a tennis pro. That's what she does that's what she did for a living. And
that's where your youngest son Dan gets his tennis skill and love. So.
Right, and our son by the name of Mike, who's also played tennis here at Central, and our daughter Susan, who lives in Plainfield, and she's a teacher. And Dan just retired as a teacher from Central. And Mike manages a factory in Greenville, South Carolina. So it's a real good family. Really, an excellent family.
And throughout all that family, the football has played a big role. They got to go along with you with your football journey at St. Raphael's. Tell me a little bit. You wrote a book in 2009, 2010?
Let's see, it's 14 now. It must be about 2010, I think.
How did this idea to add author to your long list of success come to be?
Well, my last assignment at Lucent was to change the leadership style and culture of the company. So it took 5 years to do that. And so while I was doing that, I realized that there was a similarity between the way I was coaching at St. Raphael's and changing the culture and leadership style. So I started out writing a book about the similarity. I just decided I wanted to do that. And then the more I spent doing it, the more I became interested in writing about the children.
Had you written anything like this before?
No. No, I was a terrible writer. I don't know how good I am now, but I wrote 37 pages, and I thought it was pretty good, And so I went to a cocktail party, and I was brave, and I met a lady there, and she was an editor for Harper's Bazaar. She retired. So I said, take a look at this. I want you to look at it and give me your honest feedback. Well, she got through 12 of the 37 pages, marked them all up in red, and she said, you tell a pretty good story, but you really need to learn how to write. So then I took 8 years of correspondence courses.
Wow.
I had 2 coaches, and all the time that I was learning how to write, they wanted you to write things, of course, and see if you could get them published. Well, in 8 years, I sent in probably 30 things, articles to magazines and stuff, never once. I only got one reply, and it was a no. So they didn't take any of it. But I said, well, I'm not going to be discouraged. I'm just going to keep on writing this book. So I kept on writing it, and pretty soon I got it done, and I went to the publishers, and again I went to another 20 or so publishers, and didn't even get a response except one. That was a yes. So a company by the name of Greenleaf Publishing published it, and it was self-published. I had to pay for all the stuff. I had to pay for the cover and all that sort of stuff. But that was okay. It cost $15,000.
Wow.
But we sold almost 33,000 copies now.
Wow.
I really didn't write it for that reason. I wrote it because I wanted to get I wanted to get this word out to young adults.
Well, because it's fictionalized. So, and what made you decide to do that? I mean, you could have wrote it as a nonfiction book, like a self-help or a coaching book, but what made you fictionalize this?
I think it was easier to write. I mean, easier to write a story than it is to write what you know about coaching or about values or something. So what I did is I took, these are all the characters in there are based on real kids that were in the program, and I moved them all forward in time, put them on one team. And then the story was about their effort to deal with their problems and demons, which are all lessons for people reading the book, and then at the same time try to win the Chicago Catholic League championship. So what I hoped for was that boys really don't read very much, 6 through.
It's true.
And girls read a lot more because they have a lot more books. Well, and then they like reading more. And so I wanted to get something for boys to read. And I figured if they read this story about a championship, that would be a pretty simple story, then I would slip in all these values and stuff. And if they read the book, they would also, by osmosis, maybe learn something about the values involved and the lessons. Like we had teaching a boy how to be a leader. And
you had some really interesting characters. The one character that I really liked was the young man who also was a dancer.
Oh, yeah.
And then I liked the young man who also had such a heavy vision problem. I mean, those two characters really spoke to me.
Yeah, I can remember them both very well. And the boy that was a dancer was a
ballet dancer, no less.
And he ended up with one of the leads in what was saying that it's at Christmas time.
Nutcracker.
Nutcracker.
Yeah.
And he also made the All-Star team because he was such a good player. And then the other boy, of course, had a whole bunch of operations. He came here to Central to play football, and he made it through his sophomore year as a starter. And then he just had too many operations, and he had to stay in a room dark room for months. And but he's very successful. He's a real jokester. I ran into him down at Play Again Sports, and he introduced me to his life coach. And the way he described this lady was that she teaches me to cross streets without damaging too many cars.
I think that's wonderful. And, the characters you portray, and you also start each chapter, I thought this was very clever, with a quote. And then at the end of the chapter, there was a play. So talk to me a little bit about that idea and what.
Yeah, in the beginning of the chapter it was what you call foreshadowing, and what you do is it tries to get them interested and keep their interest in
the chapter.
That chapter.
Yeah.
So it's a
it worked
quote.
For me.
Oh,
it worked.
Good. It's a quote. It's something that's key to that chapter.
Right.
And so you read that and say, oh boy, I gotta find out
what's going on. Right. Yeah.
And then at the end there was just a play that was a lesson to be learned, and so there were 33 chapters and 33 lessons to be learned, whether it be a parental lesson. I wanted to say to the kid that was reading it, hey, if you didn't get it, this is what this chapter was about. So now I can't make it any simpler than this. Read this and you'll get So one person said they read the 33 lessons first before they read the book.
And is this aimed at that junior high age boy? Is that the audience? And then I think parents get a lot. I mean, I enjoyed it as an adult, but was it really to be aimed at that young adult audience?
Yeah, and I entered the book in a couple of contests because what the heck. And so both times I got feedback from the people who were judging it that I entered it in the wrong genre. How do you say that? Genre. It was more for parents and coaches than it was for young adults. So even though I intended it for that market, I missed it. And you're right. It's down to Anderson's, for instance, they have it in the parenting section.
Okay. Because
of the similarity between coaching a youth sports team, a family team, and a business team.
Yeah.
Like I just came back from New Orleans, gave a talk down there at a meeting, and the reason I was asked to do it was because of the similarity of coaching a sports team and a business team. So.
Well, and I think this book, if I'm right, won an award. Am I right? An Honoring the Game award.
No, the
Positive Coaching Alliance.
Yeah, but that was for our program.
Okay.
The Positive Coaching Alliance gave us an award for that one particular year, the best youth sports program in America. So that's where that acting from your values came out. Yeah. It was
That's
funny.
awesome.
I was giving the acceptance talk out there, and so it had to be about why was St. Raphael successful. So, and at the end of the talk, I gave a whole bunch of stuff, and then at the end of the talk, I said, too many people today let their actions determine their values when they should let their values determine their actions. And I was really surprised at the reaction that got. There was about 600 people at this dinner meeting, and about 300 stood up.
Well, and that's, it's easier said than done with that. Your actions determine your values, but your values should determine your action. Much easier said than done.
Yeah.
And it's something that we think about, and we've had, when you have some success, then you suddenly feel the pressure to have more success, and so it's a tougher game out there.
It is, but I also think that if you act from your values, you'll find that you can be successful doing that too. And there's probably just I'm sure you can. I mean, I'm sure you can do that. And so the other interesting thing about that talk out there is that Jim Harbaugh was coach at San Francisco. Now, he was the coach at Stanford then, and he was one of the people that got up and came over and talked about that with me.
That's awesome.
He had to walk all the way across the room to get there, so it's right at home with him too. And then it's funny, when I gave the talk, I saw these people, standing up and cheering, and I still had 3 or 4 more sentences, but I had enough sense to lean into the mic and say thank you very much.
Well, and you were also honored and inducted into the American Youth Football Hall of Fame in 2010. So congratulations on that. It was, that has to be something that just makes all of this worthwhile.
Oh yeah.
Or at least verifies for you. I think your players and where they've gone make it all worthwhile for you.
Oh yeah. Then you just you just go to just go to practice last night. And makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah.
So that was really nice to get that. And, one of the things that in the acceptance speech I really didn't want to talk about, what I did or anything like that. So I sort of talked about what I learned and in the talk, and so that sort of made it fun. One of the things that I learned is that if you give unconditionally, you can't possibly give more than you receive. It's impossible.
It's a harder concept too. Jim, you're asking a lot of people. You're asking a lot of people. So tell me a little bit now. I wanted to talk a little bit about football today. There is a lot of concern with football, especially as people look for football to be a vehicle for scholarships because college is costing more, and so we're all looking at athletics to help get our kids through college. But with concussions and that, what's your take on all that? What's your opinion on all that?
Well, just one thing at a time. I think that parents who feel like the reason to play sports is to get a scholarship to go to college. One time I was giving a talk out in Arizona, and the speaker before me was Tom Lemming, and he and these were the best high school or 8th grade kids in the country. It was an all-star game. So he said to the kids, "How many of you kids expect to get a Division I scholarship?" Every kid raised his hand. He says, "Well, I got good news and bad news for you." He said, The bad news, I'll give you that first. He says only one and possibly two of you are going to get a Division I scholarship. So it's almost impossible. He said, but I've got some good news for you. He said there's 3 times as much money at the Division II and Division III level for scholarships. But he says I got some potentially bad news for you. Those scholarships depend on getting good grades. So, given the choice and the probabilities in this scenario that I just described, where should you be spending your time?
Mm-hmm.
God gave you athletic talent, but it's not going to be enough. You can work on your grades and maybe get a Division II or III scholarship, which is a much higher probability. So he took a long time to make this point. It was really a good one. So what I'm saying is that, when parents send their kids to trainers in the 4th grade in order to get a college scholarship, that's a waste of time. Because it's going to rely more on whatever God-given talent you were given in the first place. It's like when we send kids here to Central. We want them to be fundamentally sound and love the game. The coaches here will develop the talent. Developing it in the 8th grade, we do a little bit, but mostly it has to do with attitude toward the game.
And what about all the concern now with concussions and that in the game? It seems more in the news than not.
Well, I hate to say this, but I think that the National Football League really did us a disservice by highlighting how dangerous youth football is. It's, I don't know why they did that, but they did. And so it gave people a lot of reasons not to put their kids in football. So our numbers are down. Even though we have a safety program that's been in place for years. I mean, we use heads-up tackling for years. I mean, you keep your head up when you tackle. And if kids don't, we give them a timeout. We talk to them first. Then if they do it again, put their head down, they sit down and they watch a tackling drill. Like tonight, Mike Ehrlich is coming over to teach heads-up tackling to us. And we've been doing that for years. We have an athletic trainer at every single practice, or in every single game. And if there's ever a question about a kid being injured, once the trainer walks on the field, she has control. No parent can come out there and say, hey, I'll take the responsibility, my kid can play. Can't do that. So, and the other thing is that if I were a parent today, I would be more concerned about a child of mine getting a coach who destroys a child's self-esteem than I would be worried about a concussion. We had 1,500 kids in the program last year, and we record every injury. And I think we had 4 suspected but not confirmed concussions. So at the youth sports level, when you're playing 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, they don't hit people hard enough to do it. So I was very disappointed in people like Brady who said he wouldn't have his kid play football until he was in high school, and then we had this legislation that when it didn't go through, thank God, we were going to limit the amount of contact that could take place in practice. If you don't have contact in practice, you don't understand how to deal with contact and how to deliver contact in a safe way. You can do it reasonably safely. I mean, there's some hard hits out there, but I think that a child playing sports, any sport, what they learn by playing the sport itself from a life skill standpoint is well worth any risk of injury. I mean, I'm injured playing football, my shoulder, but it was worth it. So
do you think the media has given it more attention, or how about television in general with all the sports that we put on? I mean, now there are like 4 or 5, 6 different cable channels devoted to sports. Is that too much attention to sports on television, in your opinion?
Well, it's too much for me, but I think that there's an awful lot of people that play all the fantasy games and are really into it. So I guess as long as all those sports channels make money, I guess the law of supply and demand indicates that they're serving a purpose. But sometimes I think that some of the things that are on there they could make a better choice of what they tend to give publicity to. The one thing that comes to mind is the Sterling case, I guess. Huge amount of publicity for that, you know. And I'm thinking, God, there were so many other things going on day to day that were so much more important than that, but they just kept going every day. But I guess they have to do that in order to sell the newspapers or sell them whatever they're selling them. The other thing that bothers me about sports is how expensive they are. I mean, I'm not going to pay to go to $100 to go to a basketball game, and that's what and I'm sure that's not even how much it costs.
Not for a good seat, right? Yeah, right. The ticket prices to be a participant or a fan at that stadium is huge.
Yeah, and I just don't know where people get the money to do that. I wonder if somebody who does that is taking money away from a family where they need it someplace else. But those are just things I think about. But I'm very enthused about the direction of youth sports and high school sports. College sports, I'm a little worried about this idea of unionization and stuff. I don't think people realize yet how costly that's going to be, and how if that happens, how much money is going to be taken away from Division II, Division III, women's sports, men's minor sports, because there's a very high correlation between the amount of giving, the quality of students, and the quality of even teachers that you get at a college, and the success of the football team or basketball team or women's basketball team. I mean, I did a study on this when I was doing a consulting assignment for DePaul University several years ago, and it's true. It's just true. The correlation is there. So, but I really like the way sports are going in high school. I mean, I look at Bennett, I look at all the coaches that are around our area. We're so fortunate, the high school coaches, because they're all going in the direction of using football as a vehicle for teaching life skills. Mike even has somebody on his staff that's in charge of that. Every morning at 7:30 when they do their summer practice, Mark Anderson speaks to the team about that. And Pat New does the same thing over at Bennett. And Sean does it out at
North.
Yeah, God, he came to one of our coaches meetings. I swear he was a St. Raphael's coach. The way he talked about using football as a vehicle for teaching life skills. And then Murph does it. I don't know Coach Murphy as well. I don't know the coach at Nequa Ellinghouse very well yet either. But I have heard from Mike that they're all interested in the same thing. And so that's good. That's really good. I mean, for the kids that are playing, and then Mike tried to get that concept introduced to all coaches at Central.
Both men and women coaches.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, because as much as I admire your football program and what it does for young men, I'm also wishing that there was such a program for the young ladies, for girls, that is not cheerleading. Even though I appreciate the cheerleading program, I worry about the women, the young women, so wishing that they had quite the sport that football is to men. Women don't quite have that sport that is to them.
Well, I think if like what they're doing at Central, I mean, one day they took every head coach out of class and dedicated a full day to, whether it be women's sports or men's sports, to using that sport and the coaching style as a vehicle for teaching life sport. Because my son is a head tennis coach, and he participated. So,
well, that's awesome.
And he's coaching assistant coach for the girls team this year. So he's going to take that same approach with the girls on his tennis team as Mike is with the football players. So.
Yeah, and we're sitting here on Naperville Central's field, and they're running a general strength and conditioning training behind you, and it's nice to see young women participating too, from the soccer team and from the cross country team. So it's nice to see both men and women, young men and women, working together on the athletic field.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
It all goes together because it's, as you said, it's all value driven. So you're going to write another book? Are you writing another book?
Yeah, I'm going to. I got it started, and I got the first 2 chapters done, and I've sent out the emails, and I've gotten some really great responses back. So I'm gonna now the first 2 chapters are done, and then I have 11 more, one for each life skill, and I have to organize the what people have sent me as stories about how they have utilized the life skills in their real life today, and so that's all I have to do is just find some time to write it. And I think I'm going to go down to Diamond Head, Mississippi, and get my condominium down there. I'm going to play golf and write. That's it. I got to get this thing done.
Will this book be more nonfiction as a coaching tool, or are we going to meet several new characters?
No, you'll meet the characters that give me the stories. I'll have to not say who they are because I don't want to get all the approvals to
Right,
them,
yeah.
And so you'll meet some more characters. I mean so you will, yes. And they'll be talking about how this particular life skill was important to them. So.
Well, Jim, thanks for taking time. You've been an important part of Naperville and to many, many people's lives. So I can't thank you enough for taking time and sharing a little bit of your story with us today. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're sure welcome. Thank you.